And I kind of had this understanding that like, wow, I come from a lot of privilege, and that is a big reason why I have the beliefs and the values that I have. And celebrating the little wins has been a really important piece for staying motivated and continuing to work on this project for several years. I thought, oh, I'm only going to feel successful when I have 10,000 sales and my programs are in 100 schools. Then I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that moment of getting that first little inspiring moment with a child and seeing like, wow, something that I created really has the potential to create an impact in people's lives. If she hadn't initially sat down, I might have been demoralized by the lack of traffic that was stopping by, and I might have packed up my table and gone home without reading it to any kids. Finding ways to market ourselves, like podcasts, speaking engagements, or other kind of low cost ways that we can get in front of large audiences of people so that they're reaching out to us requesting partnerships rather than us having to spend all of our time and energy on sending outreach email to schools, to parents, to different communities and organizations.
Meet Noah Sorin, founder of Eudori and a rising social entrepreneur transforming early childhood education through sustainability. From storybooks to interactive learning, he's inspiring the next generation to protect our planet from the very start. Noah, welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of The Executive Edge, a podcast where we sit down with leaders, builders, and operators to explore the decisions that shape enduring businesses and meaningful lives. I'm your host, Camille Holmes, and today's guest is Noah Sorin, founder of Eudori, a sustainability education company helping children ages 3 to 8 develop a joyful, practical relationship with nature through books, plush toys, and hands-on learning experiences. From donating hundreds of books to schools to launching Benji the Tree Hopper and building a volunteer ambassador network, Noah is working to make environmental stewardship second nature for the next generation. Noah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today, Kamal.
All right. So usually how I like to get started with my guests, I like to go deep into the origin story. So you grew up in Vermont, deeply influenced by Jewish literature and stewardship values. When did that personal reverence for nature turn into a conviction that you needed to build something around it?
That's a really great question. Growing up, I always kind of considered nature as just an everyday part of life. I spent time gardening with my parents. They took me on a lot of outdoor hobbies like hiking, camping, kayaking, fishing. And it was through these experiences that I really developed that deep gratitude. But I would say that I didn't develop a conviction towards environmental stewardship until I actually moved to Boston to attend Boston University as a freshman, because that was the first time living in an environment where the majority of people actually haven't had the opportunity to engage with nature in such an intimate and meaningful way from a young age. So growing up in Montgomery, Vermont, most people already are used to practices like composting and recycling. Most people have grown some of their own food before, so they have a kind of understanding and respect for the process that it takes to create that, which makes them less likely to contribute to food waste, which were topics that we covered throughout my elementary school and also into my high school. But then when I got to BU, I had this kind of culture shock realization that a lot of people don't have any background experience in engaging with nature in that way that's fun and enjoyable, and therefore they don't have any regard for the waste that they produce, for the energy that they consume. And yeah, I would even say I could point it directly to one of my close friends as a freshman who was from the Bay Area, and he kept putting styrofoam in the recycling bin. And this was something that continuously bothered me because recycling to me is one of the simplest ways that we can make sure that we're consciously thinking about where our waste ends up. And after telling him over and over and over again that he was doing it wrong and that he should fix his behavior, one day he stopped and he said, "I'm sorry, I don't care as much as you do. I didn't grow up like you did." And that kind of hit me like right in the chest. And I kind of had this understanding that like, wow, I come from a lot of privilege, and that is a big reason why I have the beliefs and the values that I have. And it's not necessarily my friend's fault that he didn't grow up in nature, but it definitely has an impact on what his beliefs, values, and behaviors are later on. So that's when I kind of realized, okay, I want to take my own love and passion for nature, and I want to find a way to spread that to other people who maybe didn't grow up in the same way that I did.
Nice. Nice. So you worked on Eudori for 4 years before launching Benji the Tree Hopper.
Yes, that's correct.
A long pre-launch stretch.
That's a really good question. I would say I've always been really interested in both education and entrepreneurship, and I've always had a passion for storytelling, creative writing, and working with children. So kind of a culmination of all of these passions was Eudori. So after I had that conversation with my friend and realized like I really want to look into how I can introduce environmental stewardship and gratitude to young children, I met with 20 or so environmental educators throughout the city of Boston, and very quickly learned that all people, even adults, but especially young children, learn best through play. And that's when I kind of had the realization that I needed to rethink how, like, environmental education, because initially I was thinking about making subscription boxes, making like STEM education toolkits, and I completely shifted my perspective towards I need to make something that's fun, that gets kids excited about the concept of playing with nature. And I looked internally and thought about what my skills were. And I've always been passionate about creative writing. I received some national recognition for my poetry portfolio in high school. So I started by writing a children's book my sophomore year of college. And that was a really fun experience. And then once I had a draft of a children's book, the entrepreneurial bug just kind of bit me, and I just kept asking myself, how do I get this to that next phase? So I hosted an art competition across BU where students could apply to win $100 that I had received through an Innovate at BU grant program. And the competition said, like, submit a sustainability themed monster or alien for $100 and a chance to become an author of a children's book. And then once I had an illustrator and an illustrated children's book, then the question became, how do I get this in front of kids? How do I get that feedback? And I just kind of kept asking myself, what do I have to do to get that next step? So then I started going into preschools, libraries, bookstores, and doing readings to get feedback from kids. And right away, the kids have tons of advice. Oh, I really like this part of the book. I really didn't like this part of the book. Parents have their own piece of advice where, oh, we really enjoy reading this book to our kid, and they really enjoy playing with a toy that goes along with it. But what about activities that we could actually do as a parent and children together to actually make sure that they're practicing more sustainable behaviors? So I just kept following this iterative feedback loop of taking what I had, speaking to my audience who were parents, educators, and children, asking what I could do to make it better, and just kept going down that line until I was a senior and I had finally kind of gotten to the point where I had spoken to a few dozen like plush toy and book manufacturers around the world. And I realized that the majority of them don't necessarily align with the sustainability practices that we were aiming for. So, but ultimately I found one called Bears for Humanity, which is a nonprofit based out of India that sources all of their cotton from organic co-op cotton farms. So rather than supporting big factory farming, they support local farmers in India. All of their plush are hand stitched using fair trade labor. So this was a very different kind of experience than a lot of the other manufacturers that I had spoken with, except the caveat to that is to make a premium eco-friendly product, it's also going to be a lot more expensive. So I was quoted initially around $30,000 just to get my first batch of inventory of book and plush. And then I made that my goal my senior year. And it took me about a year and a half of applying for pitch competitions, grants, and then eventually running a Kickstarter campaign to raise, we ended up raising around $70,000 total to put towards our first batch of inventory and our first series of education programs. And once again, it was an iterative feedback loop. We, even after launching Benji the Tree Hopper, the first book and the first plush toy, and going into schools and getting feedback on it, we received a lot of feedback from teachers that they were actually looking for programs that went along with these resources and tools rather than just books and toys. They want a curriculum and a lesson plan so that they can incorporate those toys into learning outcomes that they'll actually visibly be able to see within their students. So I love entrepreneurship through and through. And I think that that's the most fun part of it, is being able to continuously pivot and get feedback from people and iterate. And I think that has what kept me motivated for the past 4 to 5 years of working on this project. And it's what will continue to motivate me as we continue to grow from here.
Absolutely. I can just attest to the entrepreneurial journey. It's funny because when I started, when I started on what I'm doing now, actually two different things. But like you said, the fun part is making those adjustments and really sticking to it, and you'll be surprised what comes of it, right? You never know what's at the other side, right? But I think where most people kind of, steer off or fall off the wagon is they never really, as soon as it gets hard, that's usually when most people stop, right? And it's like entrepreneurship is in the boring stuff and then the stuff people don't want to do in the day to day. And if you could do those things over and over again, that's usually when you start to see those gains, right? People think success is like this steady incline when really it's like this and then pew, it just shoots up. So absolutely, that's beautiful. So before the
Yeah,
grant, go ahead.
I, I was just going to add that celebrating the little wins has been a really important piece for staying motivated and continuing to work on this project for several years. Like the first time that I ever read my book in front of a kid, and I've now read my book in front of thousands of children, but I can still remember that the first time I ever read it in front of a kid and saw their feedback and saw them go, "Oh, I really like that part," was one of the most meaningful and
Yeah,
rewarding experiences. And obviously, if as a sophomore or a junior in college, I thought, oh, I'm only going to feel successful when I have 10,000 sales and my programs are in 100 schools, then I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that moment of getting that first little inspiring moment with a child and seeing like, wow, something that I created really has the potential to create an impact in people's lives. So making sure to celebrate the little wins every single step of the way, from finding a manufacturer to writing the first book to getting that first batch of inventory to getting our first program in a school. Every single step has helped keep me motivated and gotten me to where I am today.
100%. Gratitude is the gateway to abundance, right?
I love
So
that.
before, right? Yeah, it's something that it's important to keep in mind as you go through the journey because it's very easy to forget. So as long as you stay in a state of gratitude, abundance is always going to be in the forefront, right? Before the grant, before the ambassador network, someone had to believe in you first. What was the first educator, parent, or mentor who saw what you were building and validated it?
There's a few people that I'd like to mention, but I think the most important one, the person who really backed me and I would say got me from 0 to 1, which is often the most daunting step, is I had actually participated in a program at Boston University called the First Year Innovation Fellowship. And through that program, I met Lisa Lavina, who was an employee of Boston University Innovate at BU. And she told me that there was another student who had graduated about 6 years ago who had gone on to create Boston's first ever nature-based preschool network. It's called Boston Outdoor Preschool Network. And she told me, you absolutely need to connect with this founder. You two share so many values and passions, and I think you could learn a lot from her. So she gave me her contact info, and I reached out, and we got on a call. And what I thought was going to be maybe like a 30-minute chat ended up turning into about a 2.5 hour phone call. And Sarah told me everything that she had learned throughout the process of developing her nature-based preschool, and how it was really built off of that idea that gratitude is such an essential first stepping stone to helping people become environmental stewards. And she really opened my eyes to the plethora of other benefits that come with children spending more time outside. It's not just children becoming more educated about the environment and then learning how to recycle and compost, but also spending time outdoors means better air quality. It means less strain on our eyes from being inside with LEDs and lots of screen time. It means that we're more in tune with our surroundings and our environment, which often leads to greater empathy, not only for the planet, but also for our peers and our community members. So once I had that conversation with Sarah, she kind of invited me into Boston Outdoor Preschool Network, and I volunteered there for a while. She actually offered me my first job out of college. I was a preschool teacher for the half day program, which were 2 year, 9 months year olds up to 4 year olds. And that gave me such an amazing opportunity to kind of get feedback on my books and my plush toys, and to speak with a community of parents who already valued sustainability, to kind of see what they were doing with their children to help reinforce those values. So Sarah Bessey, the founder of Boston Outdoor Preschool Network, I would say is one of the most critical people who first believed in me. Lisa Lavina, Tom Samph, and Blake Sims are three people from the Innovate at BU programs who were some of my first entrepreneurial mentors, who really helped kind of like set up some of those initial frameworks of, okay, I have an idea. How do I create a prototype? How do I create a pitch deck to source funding? And they really put me on the path towards that iterative feedback cycle that has kept me going for this long. And I actually don't know her name, but when I first got my first book and plush created, I actually made a sign with some of my friends that said "Sustainable Story Time," and I bought some lemonade and I went to Boston Commons. And it took a while for the first parent to come up to my table, and it can be a little demoralizing to have a few dozen people walk past your table and no one stopped to say, "What's this? How can I learn more?" But there was one mother who was the first person I ever gave a Benji the Tree Hopper book to, who stopped and said, "Oh, hi, this looks really interesting." And she brought over her little 4-year-old son, and they sat down, and the two of them listened to my book together. And that was like the first kid that I had ever read Benji the Tree Hopper to. And he was absolutely in love with the story. And he related to one part where the mother didn't really like stop to listen to something that Benji had said. And because of that, I made that more of an emphasis in the story so that that could be something that other kids could continue to relate to in the future. And yeah, I would say just that one parent sitting down and taking time to listen to me gave me the confidence to sit at Boston Commons for another 2 to 3 hours. And throughout that time, I got feedback from eventually another 20 or 30 students. Whereas if she hadn't initially sat down, I might have been demoralized by the lack of traffic that was stopping by, and I might have packed up my table and gone home without reading it to any kids. So I don't remember what her name is, but truly a shout out to the first parent and child that ever listened to Benji the Tree Hopper. They did a lot more than they'll ever know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whoever you are, huge shout out to you. So you've raised over 70K through grants and competitions like we talked about. You're speaking at major events, you're running story times, you're part-time teaching. What's actually driving growth right now? Is it school partnerships, volunteer ambassadors, direct to parent sales, speaking engagements?
I would say there are two primary growth channels right now that we're kind of prioritizing and focusing on. One is our after school program. So we're actually just implemented two more after school programs at Gardner Pilot Academy and Edison Elementary School in Boston, being completely run by volunteers. So these are the first two Eudori programs that are existing without me needing to be there in person for the entire duration of it, which allows us to create a much more scalable model for like an environmental enrichment programming for pre-K to second graders. So I'm really excited about the feedback that we're going to get from these two pilot programs. And then in the future, we hope to scale this program from 2 after school programs right now. In our next cohort, we're going to try and get up to 10 schools. And then after that, we're just going to try and grow each and every time. And then secondarily, we've actually found it's been much more effective to do B2B outreach than it is to do direct to consumer sales. So we've kind of prioritized reaching out to bookstores and toy stores, starting in the Boston area, but also expanding out to other cities that have high demographics of parents and also eco-conscious individuals, because we found that the return on investment of doing outreach to bookstores and toy stores has been much higher than any efforts that we've made with paid social or online advertisements. So that's been a major focus for us lately.
Nice. And what does Eudori become? At what point does Eudori become your full-time focus? What milestone has to happen in the next 12 months?
Oh, I already feel like it's a full-time focus, but
Okay.
I would say I would say the biggest milestone for us would be selling through our first batch of inventory, because that's kind of um, the initial market validation that would be needed in order for me to take that kind of leap into full-time working on it and kind of abandon any other sources of income that I'm currently relying on for my financial security. So currently, our first batch of inventory was 2,000 books and 1,000 plush toys. So far, we've moved through a little over 500 books and around 200 plush toys. So we're making progress on it, but I wouldn't feel confident to kind of like fully delve in financially until we've moved through this first batch of inventory, which would allow us to reinvest that profit back into getting our next 3 batches, which would allow us to launch our second character, which is Flo the Ocean Dweller, who teaches kids about ocean
Oh,
conservation,
nice.
and Gibo the
Yeah,
Puffball, who teaches kids about air pollution.
right. So right now, a lot of Eudori's magic is you, right? Your presence, your storytelling, your energy in the classrooms. As you scale nationally, how do you replicate that impact without being physically present?
I think that one thing that's going to be really important for Eudori's long-term success is going to be our ability to leverage existing environmental groups and people who are already passionate about early childhood environmental education. Something that a lot of people are unaware of is actually how much this industry has grown in the past 10 to 15 years. In 2010,
Hmm.
I believe the first nature-based preschool in the way that we define it nowadays was established in the United States, and there's now over 1,000 in the US. So there is a huge growing community of people that see the importance of getting young children outside, introducing them to the natural world and environmental concepts. And I think for us, as we try to scale our education programs, it's not going to be so much of us just reaching out to schools and trying to find people to run them, but how do we get in contact with all of the high schools that already have environmental sustainability clubs, that are already doing volunteer work? How do we leverage organizations like National Honor Society, where they already have hundreds of thousands of high schoolers across the country who have a need for service hours and are looking for fun and engaging opportunities to get those service hours completed? And if we can really kind of establish ourselves as a volunteer program that these students look to as an opportunity to create impact in their communities, then it's not necessarily just my passion that's driving the growth of Eudori, but it's the passion of all of the people that are already out there across the country who are looking to make an impact in this space. And I think a way that we're going to be able to do that is by making it fun for the volunteers. A lot of environmental service work is really sad and depressing, like picking up trash or trying trying to clean up polluted places can be really heavy on the heart. But going into a classroom with a bunch of pre-K to second graders and talking about how much you love nature and having them draw pictures of their favorite plants and animals is very uplifting and very empowering. And I think we need more solutions that are focused on being enjoyable for the people that are actually implementing them, because that's what's going to keep them motivated, and that's what's going to get them to invite their friends to become Eudori ambassadors, and that's what's going to get them to pass it off when they graduate to the next generation of younger students, so that they carry forth those programs even after they leave, so that they're not doing it just because they have community service hours to check off, or just because they know that they should be doing something because the climate crisis is really terrifying, but they're doing it because it's actually really enjoyable for them, and it's really something that they're personally invested in and passionate about. So it doesn't have to be me telling them, you have to go into the school and do this and this and this, but it's them coming to me and saying, oh, I have this school that I'm working with, I want to try this, this, and this. And that's when really amazing things start to happen, is when the ideas start coming from the students and from the ambassadors rather than just from the top down.
Nice, nice. So looking ahead to the next 12 to 24 months, what's the big bet? Scaling the ambassador network, B2B school contracts, new product launches like Flow the Ocean Dweller, larger funding rounds.
I would say, first and foremost, continuing to, well, first we need to learn from these two pilot programs that we have at two schools in Boston to make sure that the program is structurally sound and that there's enough information there that students don't have to set up a call with me every single week to ask questions and make sure that they're doing it the right way, but also enough freedom so that they have agency and autonomy to run the program in their own vision and do it in a way that is personally meaningful for them. So learning from those two programs and then scaling it to the next 10 schools, and then sourcing funding for that. So we'll probably start applying to grants because it's a fully subsidized education program, which is separate from kind of like the book and the toy sales. It allows us to access a lot of other like state and citywide funding that's dedicated towards after school and education programs. And then on the other side, in the next 12 months, we're really looking to sell through the rest of those 1,500 books and 800 or so plush toys that we have sitting in inventory to achieve that market validation so that we can purchase our next batch of inventory and really start to scale as a e-commerce and retail brand as well.
Right. Okay. And so every mission-driven company has a constraint, right? Right now, what's the biggest bottleneck for Eudori? Is it distribution, awareness, funding, content production, operational bandwidth?
I would say most entrepreneurs face all of those as challenges at one point or another. I would say at this specific moment in time, awareness and cost of customer acquisition is something that's been really challenging for us. We know that when we're able to get in front of the right people, that our products and our story really resonates with them and that they're looking to support causes like this. However, it's not sustainable or scalable as a company if it's costing us 50, 100, $200 per engagement in order to get in front of that school, in order to get in front of that specific PTA board or that community of parents. So finding ways to market ourselves, like podcasts, speaking engagements, or other kind of low cost ways that we can get in front of large audiences of people so that they're reaching out to us requesting partnerships rather than us having to spend all of our time and energy on sending outreach email to schools, to parents, to different communities and organizations. So yeah, I would say awareness first and foremost, and then funding always comes into play, because if we had unlimited funding, then we could afford any cost of cost of customer acquisition cost. We would just be able to eat that and continue to scale regardless of how much it costs. So especially with where our country is at right now, a lot of funding has been cut for early childhood education as well as for sustainability programs. So making sure that we're still able to keep money coming in, whether it's through the sales of our for-profit products, the plush toys and the books, or whether it's through grants, pitch competitions, accelerator programs to support the more nonprofit side of the business, which is focused on those education programs. So awareness first, and then funding can always support awareness as well as other parts of the business, like the operational side as well.
Nice, nice. Noah, this has been great. Before we wrap up, where should people go if they want to learn more about you and Eudori or get more involved?
If you want to learn more about Eudori, you can go to Eudori.com, which is just IDORI.com. It stands for I Dream of Real Impact. And the impact that I dream of is a world where every child has the opportunity to learn about the beauty and magic of nature, no matter where they grow up.
Nice, nice. Perfect. Noah, this has been great. Really enjoyed the conversation. For those listening, you heard where to go and support Eudori. This has been another episode of The Executive Edge. I'm your host, Kamel Holmes. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.
Thanks, Kamel.